Good morning, everyone. Jerome Harris from e-prophetic.com, and in today's presentation, I want to talk about or answer the question, who is the beast of Revelation? I watched a few videos yesterday, and many of them are recent, and individuals are basically regurgitating the same old stuff that's been around for more than 40 years. It's just that what they're trying to do is they're trying to squeeze the events of today into the book of Revelation and make it appropriate for this day. When in fact, and I'm going to show you this, that the contents of the book of Revelation have nothing to do with our time period today. And this will be a very difficult pill for many of you listening to this to digest, because much of what I talk about has not been discussed ever, anywhere. By individuals or within any religious organizations. So there are those who claim that the beast is the Antichrist. Well, let's get one thing out of the way right away, that nowhere within the book of Revelation do we read of Antichrist. Do we even see the expression Antichrist mentioned? So the beast and 666 has nothing to do with Antichrist. And as to who Antichrist is or what Antichrist is, it's not what we see in videos portrayed in art, in film, and literature. It's not that either. And I'll do another video on what is 666. But this video will be dedicated to identifying who or what the beast is and when it will arrive. Now, the Bible, as many of you know, contains 66 smaller books, biblioses. And someone made the decision to include 66 books in the canon when actually, when the scrolls were unearthed, there were more than 66 books. There were about 84 smaller books, but only 66 were included into the canon. Now, the last book in that canon is called the Book of Revelation. Now, the book of Revelation really shouldn't be called the book of Revelation. What should it be called? And let me show you what it should be called. I will take you over here to Revelation chapter 1 and verse 1. And the question is answered for us right here. What should this book or this last scroll be called? Right there. The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. Now, that's what it should be called. It is a revelation from Jesus Christ that God gave him to show his servants what must soon or what must shortly take place. Yeah, that's a lot of words, but that's the title. Also, this scroll should not be a part of the larger canon called the Bible. This book, and I'm going to use the expression the book of Revelation for the sake of this video, should not be included into the canon. It should be standalone and separate all by itself. Why is that? Because this is the only book out of all of the other books that make up the Bible that identifies who the author is. We know exactly and who the author is. It tells us right here. The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him. So God is the author. He is the originator of this book called the Book of Revelation. No other book in the Bible can make that claim. So it should be standalone, and as far as I'm concerned, this is the most important book in the world, the Book of Revelation. People include it into the Bible and they try to interweave it with all of the other prophetic books in the Bible, such as Daniel and Isaiah, Ezekiel. It doesn't fit. There are some things we can reference, but it doesn't fit. If one studies this book all by itself and you didn't study anything else in the book called the Bible, you would be well ahead of the game if you understood this one book called the Book of Revelation. It is the most important book that the world has in its possession right now. Many people are afraid of it because of the colorful and menacing description of the beasts and things that are within it, the warnings and devastation that it describes, but it should not scare those who are true followers of Christ. And this is exactly what Christ says. Let me take you to another verse here, and this is within Revelation chapter 1, but this is at verse 2. Notice what Jesus says. Now, even though we know that this is revelation from Jesus Christ that God gave him, we know that Jesus gave what his Father gave him to one of his angels and dispatched his angel to John, the imprisoned John, the Apostle John, who was on the island of Patmos as an inmate or a prisoner there. And so notice what it says here. In fact, let's read the whole thing in its entirety, verse 1 and let's take it down to verse 3. The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place, he made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testifies to everything he saw, that is, the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Now, to verse 3, notice what Jesus has his angel tell John. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and who take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near. So one is not to be scared off by this prophecy. Actually, like I said, blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and who take to heart what is written in it. So don't be afraid to delve into this book and come to an understanding, and I will help you do that. Now, how can one come to understand what the beast is? When I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses for many, many years, we're talking more than 20 years, going on 30 years at the time, the Watchtower organization teach that the beast as a whole represents all of the kingdoms that existed over the earth. You know, the dominant kingdoms. This starts back from Assyria, Babylon, Greece, Rome, the Medo-Persian Empire, and the one right now that's dominating the world, the dual world power of the United States and Great Britain. That's not true. That is not what the beast is. But it's very easy to, they give a compelling argument, but it's very easy to be duped into thinking that's what the beast is. The beast is something far, far more encompassing than being empires that rule the world at different periods of times in the past and up to now, the last one. That's not the case. But to come to understand what the beast is and its image, one has to go back to a discussion that Jesus had with his disciples back in Matthew chapter 24. And then we can move forward and understand what this beast is, or what it will prove to be, what its image will be. And there's also several other beasts that I mentioned in the book of Revelation, and I'll briefly mention them just to keep everything within one salad bowl here. But going to that discussion that Jesus had with his disciples can be found in Matthew chapter 24. Let's read that together, and I'll elaborate on this so you can come to an understanding here. Now, here at Matthew chapter 24, beginning at verse 3, says here that as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Now, Jesus had previously was talking about the temple being destroyed up here in the previous verses. And so his disciples asked him a twofold question, and these questions are very important. As they say, when will this happen? That's one question. And what will be the sign? Notice there it says the sign of your coming and the end of the age. So I guess one could surmise that this is a three-pronged question. But the disciples were interested in, when will this temple be destroyed, and what would be the sign of Christ's coming? And notice that the disciples didn't say, when will we see you again? They were fully aware that once Christ died and he would ascend, that they would not see him again. So they asked for what would be the sign that would indicate to us that your return has taken place. What event can we look for that will indicate to us that you have returned back to us? And will be the end of the age. Now that's interesting, the end of the age. It's obvious that the disciples were not interested in the end of the age, and some Bible translations render this end of the world. It's obvious that the disciples were interested in the end of the world back then. That would make no sense. It stands to reason that they were interested in some other time period or some other age that would come, because they associate that with Christ's coming. You see, the sign of your coming and the end of the age. If Christ was going to be ascending back then, that age it's not going to end. It's going to continue, because Jesus said that many things would have to happen before his coming. And so one has to lump together the sign of your coming and the end of the age into one group. His disciples were interested in a particular age or a particular time period that would occur on this earth. And that's the key. I'm going to talk about that. Now, Jesus goes on here from verse 4 all the way down to verse 14 and even beyond, and talks about things that would happen. But he said that all these things, here at verse 8, he said all these things, nation rises against nation and kingdom against kingdom, wars and famines and things like that. He says all these things are the beginning of birth pangs. Remember that. Birth pangs. Who has birth pains? Women who are pregnant and who are about to give birth. So he says all these things are the beginning of birth pangs. And he goes on here at verse 9, talks about his true followers will be persecuted and put to death on the basis of his name by all nations. All nations today don't hate true followers of Christ. So this also gives us a clue that this must be some other time period that has not arrived yet. Now, again, look at this question here at verse Matthew 24, verse 3. When will this happen? And will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. So all these things here Jesus talks about are signs. His disciples asked Christ for a single event, the sign, not signs. They didn't ask him what signs, that is plural. They asked him for the sign, a single event. Does Jesus answer their question? Yes, he does. If one scrolls down to verse 30, and we're still in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus answers their question. And Jesus says here, then will appear the sign of the Son of Man. And note where this sign is. The sign is seen in heaven, not on earth. And we're going to see this again when I take you over to the book of Revelation. And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now this seeing is not going to be with the physical eye. But key words here are that when he does come, he will come on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Power and great glory are key words, and I'll explain that as well. Now, let's go over to the book of Revelation. I'm going to take you to, now we know that in chapter 13, it talks about the beast. But before I get here, I'm going to take you to the chapter before Revelation 13, and that's going to take us to Revelation chapter 12. Then we'll talk about the beast and who this beast is or will be. Now, in Revelation chapter 12, we're told about a woman and the dragon. Now, this is significant because this ties into what I showed you over here at Matthew chapter 24. And I'm going to go back and forth between Matthew chapter 24 and Revelation chapter 12. And what that's going to do is I'm going to give you a foundation of understanding to what the beast is and when the beast is. Here it says, a great sign appeared in heaven. Notice here that this sign is mentioned and notice where it's seen in heaven. I just showed you this in Matthew chapter 24, that the sign is seen in heaven. Now we're describing this sign again here in Revelation. A great sign appeared in heaven, and it talks about a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. And verse 2, she's pregnant. And I showed you previously that what Jesus says here at verse 8 in Matthew chapter 24, that all these things are at the beginning of birth pangs. It's referring to this woman who is about to give birth to something. And it says she is pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. And now it says here, then another sign appeared in heaven, but this sign describes an enormous red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns on its heads. This great dragon is Satan the devil and his vast organization in heaven. Satan's vast organization in heaven consists of rebellious angels. Get out of your mind that this great red dragon, Satan the devil, the original serpent, is some hideous looking creature. First of all, you can't see angels. You can't see the devil. You can't see his angels. If you could see him and see his angels, they're beautiful. Their beauty would blow you out of the water. So get it out of your mind of these false images that artists and people within religion try to portray this angelic creature as some hideous looking creature. He's not hideous. He's an angel of light. He's beautiful. In fact, you can read in scripture that his beauty is compared to precious stones. He is attractive, let's put it that way, but rebellious. And it's also interesting to note here that he has angels. Now, I showed you here back at Revelation chapter 1 that Jesus Christ has his angels also, because it shows here that he made it known, that's the revelation, by sending his angel to his servant John. So Christ himself in heaven has angels at his disposal. And here we see at Revelation chapter 12 that the dragon has his cadre of angels too. A lot of them. And you're going to see that in a few moments here. Now it says here that we saw up here that this woman, she has a crown of 12 stars on her head. Notice here that this enormous red dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its head. So we have a heavenly organization. And let me back up here. This woman, who's this woman? This woman that we see in heaven, this is God's kingdom in heaven. This is God's organization. And within that, of course, are his angelic hosts. They make up his vast heavenly organization. The devil, this dragon, is also seen in heaven. He too has a vast angelic organization. And that's what we see here. It says here that an enormous dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. So the third of the stars are his rebellious angels. And we're not told here that he flung all of them to the earth. It says that he flung a third of them, a third of his vast angelic organization. He flung a third of his angels, his stars, down to the earth. You can't fling a literal star to the earth because a star would burn the earth up. So these stars are his angelic hosts, and he flung a third of them, only a third of them, down to the earth itself. Why? Because this woman that we see here who is pregnant is about to give birth to something. What is God's organization in heaven? This woman about to give birth to. Not a literal person, but Christ's 1,000-year kingdom that is to rule over the earth for 1,000 years. So what the devil does, he flings a third of his stars or his angelic host down to the earth in preparation to intercept what this woman is going to produce, Christ's 1,000-year kingdom over the earth. This is what the devil does not want set up on the earth. And so we can see here, if we could continue to read here, it says that the dragon stood in front of the woman. Imagine this dragon standing in front of the woman, that's God's heavenly organization, who is about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment it is born. So you can see here that the dragon, that Satan the devil, doesn't want the coming forth of Christ's 1,000-year kingdom over the earth. He doesn't want that to happen. So he's standing in front of this woman, waiting for her to give birth so he can devour it. And that's what he's doing right now. He's at this moment as I'm speaking, the devil he's in heaven. And he's waiting for this woman, God's heavenly organization, to give birth to Christ's 1,000-year kingdom, with Christ being its king, obviously. Then if you read here at verse 5, she gave birth to a son, a male child, and notice here, who will rule all the nations. It's all the nations on the earth. It doesn't say countries here. Nations. Nations of men and women. Nations in that sense, not countries, because when all this occurs, there will be no nations, no countries rather, on the earth. They'll all be destroyed. There'll be no United States, no Russia, no China, no Germany, no UK, no Canada, no Mexico, none of them. They'll all be things long gone. So what will remain on the earth will be nations of people, people who are of different colors. Nations in that sense, tribes and languages. That's nations in that sense, okay? And it says that this male child will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and his throne. This is significant, and I'll explain this in a few moments. Let me continue to read here. Verse 6, the woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, and that where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. And this is really years, a year for a day. So what does it mean here that her child was snatched up to God and to his throne? What that means here is that Christ's 1,000-year kingdom will run its course. It's going to have a beginning and it's going to have an ending. So that age of 1,000 years, and I believe specifically it's going to be 1,260 years, will run its course. It'll have a beginning and it will have an ending. When it ends, what's going to happen is that the child will be snatched up to God and to his throne. And here we see at verse 6 that the woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. And so what this means in a nutshell, like I just mentioned, is that the devil will not be able to prevent the birth of Christ's 1,000-year kingdom. It will assuredly run its course of 1,000 years. It will have a beginning and it will have an ending. So it is a definite kingdom. That's what that means. If Christ's kingdom was indefinite, that would mean that it would have no ending. But it is a definite kingdom, showing that it has a beginning and it has an ending. And in that duration, the devil himself will be abyssed for 1,000 years. Now let me take you over to Revelation chapter 20. And let's read something there too, because this is significant. And here we see here that John goes on to talk about. He says, and I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, this is the dragon we just referred to, that ancient serpent that we saw back in the Garden of Eden, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him, to keep him. Why? To keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. Whose 1,000 years? Christ's 1,000-year kingdom over the earth. So this is teaching us here that the devil is going to be abyssed for the exact same duration of Christ's 1,000-year kingdom over the earth, so that he will not be able to interfere with its administration, with his administration over the earth. That's exactly what it says here, to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. And when 1,000 years will have ended, then the devil will be released. Now, visualize this. When Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends, the devil will be released, and he's going to resume deceiving the nations again. But this time, the nations will be different. All of mankind will have been restored. And during the 1,000-year time period of Christ, there'll be a great resurrection. All of mankind who've died in the past will be resurrected. They'll be taught. They'll become righteous. They'll be restored back to their Creator. When Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends, there will be no more need for an intermediary between man and God. Christ is out of the picture. Man will deal with God just as Adam did, one to one. Adam did not have that intermediator. Adam did not have a Christ. So when Satan comes up out of the abyss, that's what he's going to see. Christ's kingdom will have ended. If you come down here to verse 7, it goes on to talk about here that when the 1,000 years were over, as Christ's 1,000-year kingdom of the earth, Satan will be released from his prison, the abyss. And what will he do? It says, and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, that's what they'll be called, and gather them for battle. And I'll talk about that battle in some other video, but this is the battle at the place called Armageddon. So, if we go back to Revelation chapter 12, then I'll go over to Revelation chapter 13 here. We can see here that at verse 7, we're told that a war broke out in heaven. So it's important to understand where the devil at this moment is. He's in heaven. The event that we're reading about right here at verse 7 has not occurred yet, but it shows here that then a war broke out in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels. And again, I'm going to emphasize this, the dragon, that's to say the devil, has angels. See there it says, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough. And they lost their place where? They lost their place in heaven. So the dragon, the devil, had a place in heaven. And the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray, was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. And their abyss for that 1,000 years. Then Christ's 1,000-year kingdom comes. Now, let's go back again to Revelation chapter 24, verse 30, and then I'll go to Revelation chapter 13, and I promise you, and I'll tell you what that beast will prove to be. Recall that I mentioned that Christ answered the question that his disciples asked him up here at verse 3. As far as when will this happen and what will be the sign of it coming in the end of the age. And I showed you in Revelation where it talked about when the 1,000 years had ended, right there at Revelation chapter 20, when the 1,000 years were over or had ended. This is what his disciples were referring to, the end of that age. Why would the disciples be interested in the end of Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ending? Because they know that this is what's going to happen. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison. To do what? To go out to deceive the nations of the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. That's what they're interested in. When will Christ's 1,000-year kingdom end? Because they know that when it ends, this is what's going to happen. That's when things get really interesting. So the book of Revelation, all of it, has nothing to do with our time period today, but has everything to do with what happens after Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends. And isn't that what Jesus says here? If you go back to Revelation chapter 1, it says here, the revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. Soon take place after what? Soon take place, what must soon take place or surely take place after Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends. When that age ends, and again, what happens? Satan is released out of the abyss. So what we're reading about here in the entire book of Revelation, beginning from chapter 1 and going all the way into chapter 22, it's detailing for us the events that's going to occur when Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends, that age ends, and Satan is released from the abyss, and he begins to deceive the nations, and things get very interesting thereafter. I believe that hundreds of years is going to transpire when Satan is released, because he's going to bring up out of the abyss with him this beast, which I'm going to describe right now. So let's go over to Revelation chapter 13. Let's talk about this beast. And notice that it says here that the dragon stood still on the shore of the sea. What sea is this referring to? Is it referring to the literal sea as in oceans? No. This is referring to the sea of mankind. It doesn't say seas, as in 7 seas. Sea. So this shows us that a time period is going to occur on this earth in the future where the sea of mankind will be one sea. All of mankind will be of one mind, one spirit, one thought, one agreement, under one roof, so to speak, under one God. So it's showing here that the devil, when he's released, he's going to stand on the shore of the sea. And it says he stands on the shore of the sea, showing that he has inserted himself over a world that Christ himself created and left behind. Or a society, rather, a righteous human society that Christ took 1,000 years to restore back to its creator. Now the devil is standing on the shore of the sea. And then it says here, John goes on to talk about here, he says, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. So one has to imagine the dragon, Satan the devil, a very powerful creature. He's now been released. He's invisible, one can't see him at that time, and even now you can't see him. But he's standing on the shore of the sea, and it's almost as if he's resurrecting. He has his hands outstretched out over the sea of mankind in those future days, and he's resurrecting out of that sea of mankind a beast. This beast will be a physical entity. This beast will not be some monster. It will not be some creature. It won't be some statue that people will set up. This will be a literal government. This beast will be Satan's throne, his government over the entire earth, his governance, which will be ran by men. And it goes on to say here that it had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and each head a blasphemous name. Verse 2, the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like that of a lion. So this thing is going to speak with authority. It's going to be fast moving like a leopard as it pervades the earth. And feet like those of a bear. That has nothing to do with Russia, folks. Feet like a bear in that you look at a bear's feet, it has a very large footprint. So its footprint will encompass the globe. And it's interesting here to notice that where this beast gets his power. This government will be powered by the dragon itself, Satan. It says here that the dragon gave the beast his power, not only just his power, but it gives this beast his throne. You see there? So this beast is a government, a worldwide government, a throne. So the dragon gives this beast, this visible representation of him, his throne, and also gives it a third thing, his great authority. It's interesting. And so this beast will be a worldwide government that Satan brings up with him out of the sea. And this isn't going to happen just like that. It's the dragon or the devil is subtle. So once he's released out of the abyss, things will go on as normal in those future days. People will be getting along, and the earth will be a beautiful place. People will be living in peace and harmony. The devil's release from the abyss and his deception upon the society in those days, the one world society, will be a subtle thing. And it will take, I believe, hundreds of years for him to establish his throne on the earth. It will be it will be a safe society. It'll be so peaceful that the people will not want to see it go away. I'm going to show you that. Now, if we scroll down some more here, we'll see that there will be another beast that the devil will bring up out of the earth. Now, we saw up here that he resurrects out of the sea of mankind an actual literal government, but he's going to need something or someone that comes out of the earth to administer or to run his beastly government over the earth in those days. And that's what we see here. We see that he brings up out of the earth another beast. Now, notice here it says, and here John says, and I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. Why out of the earth? Well, ask yourself, when God created the first man, where did he come from? He was formed out of the elements of the earth. So what this is telling us is that the second beast is going to be a conglomeration of men of the earth, flesh and blood men. And it says that it had two horns like a lamb, but spoke like a dragon. So this thing speaks. It also has a look. It has two horns like a lamb. In other words, it's going to appear lamb-like or Christ-like. But the things that it speaks in deception, remember now, when the devil is released out of the abyss, what is his goal? To deceive the nations. So this will be his mouthpiece. This will be the men. It's like you have senators and congressmen and governors and so forth, these politicians. These will be Satan's politicians within his literal and physical beastly government over the earth. They will run it. Satan is not, he's the one manipulating the puppet strings, but remember now, you can't see the devil, but he will have visible representatives. And these men actually, and there'll be thousands of them, these men will have been former kings when Christ had his administration over the earth. Satan goes to them because they will have generated a lot of respect and trust among those within that society that Christ left behind. So Satan is going to use them. He's going to mislead them first of all. And it says here that that's this earth beast, exercised all of the authority of the first beast on its behalf. See, so it's acting on the behalf of that first beast, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. Now this worship is a support of Satan's government, his beastly government, his beast. And that's exactly what Satan wants. Recall back in the book of Matthew, chapter 4, when Jesus was being tempted by the devil. What did the devil want from Christ? When the devil took Christ to an unusually high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world, the devil says to the Son of God, I will give you all these things if you, and their glory, all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, if you worship me. So the devil wants worship. Now, it makes no sense for anyone, if they could see the devil, to give him worship directly, because people normally aren't going to do that, because they're going to say, well, you're the devil, I'm not going to worship you. So how does the devil get his worship? He gets it through things, through proxies, through organizations. And here what we're seeing here is that this second beast, it says it exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and it made the earth and its inhabitants worship, that is, support the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And I'll talk about that in another video. So Satan wants worship. He wants control over God's creation, mankind, and he's going to get it, because it says here that he made the earth and its inhabitants worship. Well, it shows here that his human mouthpieces here, this false prophets, what they really are, that looks like a lamb but speaks like as a dragon. This is a false prophet, and these men will be deceived, which means that they will be lied to. So when these men speak, they won't be liars. They will be men speaking under a deception. They will have been deceived, and they will play a very important role. And it shows how these men, that they will perform great signs, even causing fire to come down out of heaven to the earth in full view of people. So they'll have all this power that the dragon will give them. And it says here, because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. So it's going to perform many powerful works to deceive all of mankind in those future days, and people will put trust in Satan's beast and these men. It goes on here at verse 15. It says the second beast was given power. This is the earth beast here. These men was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast. In other words, these men, they will use words, and many grandiose words, to ensure that Satan's beast, his physical government on the earth, will still have life in it, that people will support it. As long as the people are supporting it, this beast will have strength and power. And so these men will ensure that the first beast, Satan's government over the earth, will be maintained. And then, this was interesting, the second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast. So there's going to be an image. What is the image of the United States government? People say the flag. Not really. It's the Constitution of the United States. That's the document by which all Americans are ruled by, the Constitution of the United States. The image of Satan's beastly government in those future days will be a constitution. And I believe that it will be a document of sorts that all of the inhabitants of the world in those future days will sign off on. And we see here that this second beast, these men, these campaigners for the maintenance of Satan's beastly government over the earth, they're going to push for the creation of a constitution or an image that the whole world will sign off on. And it shows here that this image could speak in one sense, not in a literal sense, but speak in the sense that the words contained in this document has power. It speaks in that sense. And those who refuse to worship the image, that is, to abide by its rules, be killed. And that it forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands and or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. And it goes down here at verse 18, this calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, or it is a man's number, or it is a number of a man, and that number is 666. This is 666 has nothing to do with Antichrist. It has everything to do with, as it states here, the number of that beast. Now, this can be explained very easily, but it's going to call for wisdom. Not our wisdom, but God's wisdom, and one has to ask for that in order to come to an understanding as to what this is. Now, the image of the beast, as I just mentioned, will be some type of worldwide constitution, which I believe will consist of 166 rules and regulations that the world will have to sign off on. It's like going back to the Mosaic law, so to speak. And if people fail to keep that law, then Satan's government, his beast, will institute punishments. They won't be able to buy or sell. They'll be put to death. Want them killed, whether that's in a literal sense or killed by having them cut off from the rest of those who support that society in that future time period. But it goes on here to say at verse 16 how that this earth beast, this false prophet, these campaigners and supporters of Satan's government on the earth in these future days, that they will force all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. This will not be some literal mark. What marks a person is what they have in here and what they have up here. Today, if you watch Americans, in fact, of almost of any government, if they salute, what is that? That's right hand to forehead. Or if they place their right hand over their heart when they do the allegiance, Hitler's salute is the right hand. It's always with the right hand, not with the left hand. So this mark is simply an indication as to what one's mindset, where their allegiances will lie. And let's say, for example, if you live back in Hitler's Third Reich, and at the playing of the music, everyone stands up and they chant Sieg Heil, and they've got their hands up like this. Let's suppose that you were in that environment, but you were one who did not do that. You did not stand, and you did not put your hand out like this, and you didn't say Sieg Heil. It'll be public to everyone around you where your allegiances lie. Obviously, your allegiances, in their viewpoint, isn't going to be with Hitler's regime, because they see that you're not saying Sieg Heil and you're not giving that salute. Even in America, if you're at some event and if you don't stand and place your hand over your heart, and if you take a knee, people will quickly say, well, you're unpatriotic. You're not supportive of the American government. This is what that means as far as receiving a mark in their right hands and on their foreheads. Satan's too clever. He's too subtle to plant some identifiable mark up here or on their right hand. This simply signifies people will know by the way you're conducting yourself in those future days if you're supportive or worshipful of Satan's beast. And you'll be easily identified. And when you're identified as being at the center, then things will not be easy for you at some point in time within that beastly government where you're not going to be able to buy or sell. And that this beast has a number. And as it says here, that is a number of a man doesn't mean that it's some Antichrist. Antichrist is never mentioned in the book of Revelation. That it has a number of a man shows that this beast is fueled by men who have been given authority by the dragon. On what day of creation were we created? The sixth day, the sixth creative day. Biologically, we know that, well, I should say atomically, we are carbon-based units. The atomic number of carbon is 666. Now, that may sound far-fetched, but what we're told here is that this beast, that men will be involved in the administration of Satan's future beast or government over the earth. And that's why, excuse me, it mentions here this beast that comes out of the earth. That's where we come from. We're formed from the elements of the earth. So men will be the visible elements of this beastly kingdom that Satan will set up over the earth. Satan will be invisibly in the background. You're not going to see angels and things like that. You're going to see men who seem to have unusual powers to deceive the world. So it will be men, and the focus will be off of Satan. In fact, during this time period, one's mindset isn't going to be thinking that Satan somehow is involved in this. In fact, the world in those future days might even believe that the devil himself no longer exists, because all that people will see those future days will be men like we see men today running these various governments, except in this case there will only be one government over the earth, with men with unusual powers, as if they've been given these powers by God. And people will probably believe that the powers that these men possess, when they will be performing these many miracles and signs, they may believe that it comes from God. And thus people will believe that these men have God's support. That's why they look like a lamb but speak as a dragon. So this last part down here, verse 18, is simply showing us that it will be men who will be in the forefront in those future days, with Satan invisibly in the background controlling everything, and the world not believing that Satan has anything to do with all this. And one must keep in mind that when Christ's kingdom ends, people aren't going to be aware of when it ends. When it ends, it ends. But transitioning into another age, where Satan comes up out of the abyss, that's going to be unnoticed. It's going to be a gradual transition to where things get bad. It's not going to be like that. Christ's kingdom ends, and all of a sudden the devil is released and things go hell in a hay basket. No, it's not going to be like that. Satan's throne will be beautiful, peaceful, safe. People will not want to see it go away. In fact, somewhere in here it reads that people will not want to see it go away. In fact, right here at verse 4, this is at Revelation chapter 13, verse 4, people worship the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And they also worship the beast and ask, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? So they're going to believe that Satan's government over the earth, and it's going to have to be something else incredible. They're going to see this and how beneficial it's going to be to all those who are within it. They're going to be chanting, in a sense, who's like this government? Who can fight against it? Who can war against it? So if something from above, say God's kingdom are coming down, and people, they're going to believe that Satan's government is going to be invincible. And so there's going to be an announcement made by an angel that's going to shake things up. And that announcement can be found at Revelation chapter 14, verse 6. Let me take you there. And it shows here, John says, and I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. It's not saying countries here, but every nation, tribe, language, and people. That's what makes up the entire world in those future days. And that gospel that this angel has, that he's going to proclaim to the entire world, is going in Satan's beast, and those who are in it, it's going to shake things up. It's going to slap to sobriety some of those who remember what Christ taught during his 1,000-year kingdom. And they're going to wake up and say, oh, wait a minute, what have we done here? And some of them are going to remove their support or worship from Satan's beast. And that's when Satan and those who are loyal to Satan's beastly government, those who worship the dragon and its beast, they will turn on their former brethren and mislead them like Judas misled Christ. And as it states here at Revelation chapter 13, they will not be able to buy or sell. And they'll want their former brethren put to death because they will no longer support, like they're supporting, or they will be supporting, what they think is invincible, Satan's beast. People will be that deceived. They'll be that loyal, and they will not want to see what Satan has established on the earth go away. But God's kingdom is surely going to come, and that angel who's going to be declaring that the gospel of the good news of God's kingdom coming to the earth to replace Satan's beast and destroy Satan as well and his angels, they are not going to want to see that go away. So they're going to fight against or rebel against the coming down of God's kingdom to the earth. That is what Armageddon is. Armageddon is not a war or battle between the nations of the world today. World War III and all that. It has nothing to do with that. Armageddon is a contention or a battle over who has rightful ownership over the earth. Satan will have established his throne on the earth, will have deceived all of the people in those future days that his beast is the joint. Nothing can fight against it, and they're going to believe that, and they're going to give all their allegiance and loyalty to Satan's beast. And I just showed you that. Now, when the angel proclaims to the whole earth, and I believe this will be somehow telepathically and over a period of time, it's going to shake things up. And people are going to say, wait a minute, God's kingdom has to come down. And you're going to have most of the population in those future days, and they're going to resist that. Satan will have already duped them and conditioned them to rebel against anything coming down to upset the balance of things that he has established on the earth. Remember now, this angel, Satan, is rebellious. He's not ugly. He's just a rebellious angel, and so are his demons. And Satan does not want to give up worship. The worship that he has will be given through his beast and through his image. He's not going to want to give it up. And the people that he's conditioned to love his beast, to love his beneficial and peace and safe throne, they're not want to give that up either. But in those days when they cry peace and safety, then the end will come. That's what that means. It has nothing to do with what's happening today. This is all yet future. So who is the beast? The beast is Satan's future government or throne that will exist on the earth in future days after Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends. The book of Revelation, or more accurately, the revelation from Jesus Christ that God gave him to show his servants the things that must shortly take place. Surely take place after what? After his kingdom ends. Christ's 1,000-year kingdom ends, and that's when Satan's released. The entire book of Revelation is about that time period, about that age. That's why his disciples, back in Matthew chapter 24, verse 3, were interested in Christ coming, the sign of his coming, which is actually the sign of his coming, is the beginning of his 1,000-year kingdom. And so they were interested in, when will that end? When will that age end? So that they were interested in when Christ's kingdom would end, because they knew that when it ends, Satan is released out of the abyss. And that's when things get really interesting. That's what the book of Revelation is about. It has nothing to do with anything today. Nothing. And this is what people are not talking about. So whenever they proceed to explain this wonderful book, this blessed book called the book of Revelation, they can always get it wrong, because they're putting it into the wrong time period. It is a description about what's going to occur in future days after Christ's 1,000-year kingdom has come to an end. And Christ's 1,000-year kingdom hasn't even begun yet. So we're nowhere near what is called the last days. Nowhere. Not even close. And that's why the world today is so badly being misled and deceived, because it's trying so hard to fit in the book of Revelation into this time period today. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And so if you visit the e-prophetic.com website, I've written articles on this. I am doing a series, a verse-by-verse explanation of the book of Revelation. So check out the link there on the website. I'm also writing a book that will cover some of the things I've talked about here, but in more detailed, that covers the entire book of Revelation. There will be nothing like this anywhere. No one's talking about this in this manner. And one says, well, how do you know that what you're saying is true? I don't know. All I know is that I have asked the Most-High God through his Son that I want to know the truth. And something happened. On a bus ride from work one day, I can't explain it either. But this is for you. If you want to know the truth, you have to ask the Most High God for it. You can't count on the religions of mankind or other individuals, not even me, to give you the truth. I can't do that. That can only come from the Most High God through his Son, who is the truth. But you have to ask for it, and without let up. Even though my Master, Christ Jesus, is no longer with us today in the flesh, he has ascended. But he promised that he would send his true followers, Holy Spirit, and that it would teach us and show us all things. And that's exactly what will happen for those who want to know the truth. Let me tell you something else here. The truth is not popular in this world. Why is that? Because if you read it, John chapter 18, verse 36, Jesus said that his kingdom is not of this world. So how can anything as far as religious systems rise up out of a world that Jesus says that his kingdom is no part of? There's nothing truthful that can rise up out of this world. Christ's kingdom is not of this world. So what exists on the surface of the ground right now are just counterfeits. We have religious systems that they may use Christ's name and title, but they're misleading the entire world. And then, obviously, I believe a lot of them unwittingly, they don't know. I'm not saying that they're lying to people. I'm saying that they are in error. In order for one to lie to someone, you have to first know the truth. But if one doesn't know the truth, then you can't lie. If you speak a thing, you speak it in error. You're not lying to someone. And so what's occurring right now is lots of error. The devil himself is a liar because he knows the truth. And this world belongs to the devil. Did he not offer all of the kingdoms of the world to Christ? Did Christ check his hand? Did Christ say, no, you can't give me what does not belong to you? No. We can read there at 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, that Satan is the God of this world. Let's go there briefly and show you that. And I bring these things up to put things in perspective as to who we're dealing with right now. We're not dealing with the Most High God in this world. We're dealing with the devil. And it's what it says here. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. He's putting things on here. He's involved in all these deception factories that are cranking out 24/7, misleading the world away from the truth. The truth is not going to be popular. And once you know the truth and you speak it, You are not going to be well liked, not in this world. People will come after you, even people within these religious organizations. Christianity, something Christ, neither Christ or God authorized, the creation of. They will not like you for it. There will be some who will have an open mind and they'll consider what you're saying, but they're not going to be fully accepting of what you say because they are loyal to things. They're loyal to religious organizations, which really amounts to idolatry. Christ never said to establish something called Christianity. In fact, he never told his followers to be called Christians. Now, once do we hear of Christ calling his followers Christians, and after he ascended, we don't hear of them calling each other by that title. These things come up out of our earth or world that Christ says that his kingdom is no part of. These things come out of Satan's world and all designed to mislead God's creation, mankind. But that's what the beast is. Visit e-prophetic.com website and just stay tuned, stay connected. Pray to the Most-High God for the truth and be careful what you ask for. This is R. Jerome Harris from e-prophetic.com. Thank you for viewing.